expand your vocabulary with our Core 2000 Words ebook. It's free and packed with essential expressions that you'll use on a daily basis. Start building your vocabulary today. Click the link in the description below to download your free Hebrew ebook before it's gone.
Shalom, אני Anna. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet Bekalei Kalut, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. Over the next 20 lessons, you'll learn everything there is to know about reading and writing Hebrew. By the end, you'll even be able to read some portions of the Hebrew Bible. Are you ready? So let's start. בואו נתחיל. Hebrew has only one alphabet of 22 letters, so it's super easy. Once you know these, a few variations and a simple vowel system, you will be ready to read one of the most ancient languages in the world. As you may know, the Hebrew writing system is written from right to left. At first, this may seem intimidating or confusing, but you'll get the hang of it in no time. Let's start with the first letter, Aleph. What sound does Aleph make? In Hebrew, the name of each letter starts with the sound you use to pronounce it, which means the sound of Aleph is A. It is handwritten like this. Now, in Hebrew, there are always two ways to write a letter: the written way, which is used in everyday handwriting, and the print way, which you will see in books and newspapers, on signs, and so forth. This is the written way. The print version looks like this. When Israeli kids first learn how to write, they use this print typewriting. It's useful and, as you'll see later, very easy to learn both versions of every letter. Let's do it again. Here's the written form. And here's the print form. You can now write your first letter in Hebrew. Good, let's move on. The second character is Bet. The sound of Bet is B, and it looks like this. Pay attention to the dot, it has to be in the middle. The print version is like this. If you leave out the dot, Bet becomes Vet. The sound of Vet is V, but we don't count Vet as a separate letter in the alphabet. So far, you've studied two letters of the Hebrew Aleph Bet, and you've learned three sounds. Want to write them once again? Let's do it! Okay, here is Aleph. This is handwritten. Aleph in print. And now Bet, handwritten. And Bet in print. Then Vet, handwritten. Vet in print style. Did you know you can already write a word in Hebrew? This is Abba. Abba in Hebrew means father. It is the first word every Israeli baby says. These are the simplest phonetic sounds. Try it out. Abba in handwriting. And now the print style. Abba. Great job! In this lesson, you learned the first two letters of the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph, Bet. You also practice your first word, in both print and writing styles. Before we move on to the next lesson, I want to introduce the Hebrew vowel system. Among 22 Hebrew letters, there are 5 vowels. one of which we learned in this lesson. But beside those 5, there is another vowel system called nikud. Nikud are a series of dots or points that are used to indicate vowel sounds connected to consonants. Once you have more experience reading Hebrew, you may not see these symbols so often in native texts. But if you can master them when you start learning Hebrew, it will make learning Hebrew much faster and easier. The nikud take the form of dots, lines, and combinations of the two, and are written in, under, on top, or beside consonant letters. Sound complicated? Don't worry, we'll take it slowly, and by the end of this series, they will seem easy. Now it's time for Yana's insights. Have you been writing as you watch? Hope so. There is no better way to master the alphabet quickly than to write them yourself. I also recommend that you make flashcards for each letter and study them whenever you get a chance. Do you know how to write dag, the word for fish, in Hebrew? It will definitely come in handy when you read a menu in Israel. And you learn that and much more in the next lesson. Lehitraot! Shalom, אני Yana. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet Bekale Kalut, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. In the last lesson, we learned the first 2 letters of the Aleph Bet. Do you remember them? In this lesson, we'll move on to the next couple of letters and the first nikud symbol. So let's start. בואו נתחיל. The third letter of the Aleph Bet is Gimel. The sound of Gimel is G. Let's first see how to write it by hand. Gimel in handwriting. And in print it looks like this. Gimel. They look quite different, don't they? But the good news is that you already can write another Hebrew word, Gag. This means roof in handwriting. Gag. And in print it looks like this. Gag. Here you may be a little confused. If you were to see this word written, you might want to read it as gug. There is no vowel sound. In Hebrew, the vowels are often not written. You would know that this word is pronounced gag because it has been taught to you before. And this is why the nikud is so important. The nikud shows learners of the Hebrew language what vowel sound is used in words, but don't rely on them too much. As you get more experienced with Hebrew, you should be able to remember how to read words, even if the nikud is not attached. Now it's time to introduce to you the first nikud. Remember, nikud are small points and lines that are placed in, under, on top, or beside consonants. The first one has the sound A, just like Aleph. This is kamatz, and it looks like this. And it's always written right under the consonant letter. Let's write roof a couple more times while pronouncing its sound, A. So for example, gag in handwriting looks like this. Gag. And in print, Gag. Also, the word Abba has kamatz under 2 of its letters. Abba. And in print version, Abba. So now you can read and write 2 words in Hebrew using the full vowel system. You can adjust the sound of the letter Gimel by writing a comma right here. Now it is read J, as in the name George. First the Gimel, and then the comma on the upper left side. and in print it looks like this. So now let's move to the fourth letter, Daled, with the sound of D. Daled. That's it, just one curve for the handwriting. And Daled in print looks like this. Daled. So let's make another word with the letter Gimel and Daled. Here, dag means fish. This will come in very handy whenever you are in a restaurant. Let's write it. Da, g. And now in print. Da, g. Now it's time for Yana's insights. Don't get lost in studying and forget the real world. Find Hebrew letters around you. Don't see any alphabet letters around you? Go to HebrewPod101.com and check out the alphabet transcripts for every lesson dialogue. You may not be able to read them all yet, but you can get a feel of how the Hebrew letters are used in real life. Do you know what ahava means? It's the most romantic word in Hebrew. You will be able to write and read this and much more in the next lesson. See you then. Lehitraot. Shalom, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet Bekalei Kalut, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. In the last lesson, we learned the third and fourth Hebrew letters, Gimel and Dalet. Do you remember how to write fish? And what about roof? In this lesson, we will learn how to write the word for love in Hebrew. Are you ready? So let's start. בואו נתחיל. The fifth Hebrew letter is Hey. Hey sound is Ha, but it can also sound like Ah. You will see how it changes in a second. Let's first write it in handwriting. Hey. The print version is very similar. Hey. Make sure to keep Hey curved while handwriting, but use sharp angles in print. So, as I mentioned, Hey can sound like both Ha and Ah. The word Ahava uses it in both ways. When Hey appears in the end of the word, it will always sound as Ah. Ahava is love in Hebrew. Let's try to write it down. Ah, pronounced Ha. Remember the sound here is V, so we don't need a dot of bet. Pronounce A. Let's do it once more in handwriting. Ahava. A-ha-va. Isn't it a beautiful word with a beautiful curved shape? Now let's do it in print. A-ha-va. So if you want to add the full nikud for this word, we need to use a new nikud symbol, patach. Just like kamatz from last lesson, patach has the sound of A. Now remember, when you write in modern Hebrew, you don't need to use the nikud system. It is there mostly for you to read, especially when learning new vocabulary, or if you want to study the Hebrew Bible. Now let's spell ahava with the full nikud. Ahava. A-ha-va. Ahava. Here's the print version. Here you saw how the letter Hey can sound in two different ways. So you already know 5 Hebrew letters and several words. Don't forget to practice the characters in both handwriting and print. Now it's time for Yana's insights. Doesn't hey from this lesson sound like hey in English? When you say hello to your friends? That's exactly the sound for the Hebrew letter hey. Now you can think of the letter hey when saying hello to your friends and memorize it better. In the next lesson, we will see how one word can be pronounced in 3 different ways in Hebrew. It may sound confusing, but remember, you'll have the nikud to help you. See you next time. להתראות. שלום, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's א' ב' בקלי קלות. The fastest, easiest and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. In the last lesson we learned to write the most important word in Hebrew, ahava, the word for love. Do you remember the nikud for ahava? If you are not feeling confident about it, review the last lesson before continuing on from here. In this lesson, we will learn 1 new Hebrew letter and 3 more nikud. Are you ready? So let's start. בואו נתחיל. The 6th letter is vav. The sound of vav is v or o or u, and it's written like this. That's it. Vav has only 1 stroke from top to the bottom. The print version is the same for vav, with only a small difference. In Hebrew, vav is not only the name of the character, it's also a word by itself. It means a hook. Doesn't vav look like a hook? You can write this word like this. It's just the letter vav 2 times. If you want to add nikud, it will look like this. Now we move on to the next nikud symbol, chirik, with the sound I, like in si. It's just 1 dot under the letter, I. Now you can write a very common name, one that belongs to the second and perhaps most famous king of the ancient kingdom of Israel, David. It's written with 2 dalet and 1 vav. The nikud here is important. Otherwise, it can have different pronunciation and meaning. Let's write this word. David. And now in print. David. The next nikud for this lesson is shuruk, with the sound u. This is how you make vav sound like u. For example, if we take the same letters from David and instead of chirik we add shuruk, it will be dud, electric water heater. Perhaps now you can appreciate the power of learning the nikud when you're first studying Hebrew. Let's write this word. Dud. And now in print. Dud. Notice how shuruk goes to the left of the vav. Seem complicated? Don't worry, we will review them all at the end of this lesson. But not before we will learn the last nikud for today. Cholam maleh, with the sound of o. This is how you make vav sound like o. Let's write this. D, o, d. Dod. And now in print. Dod. Notice that cholam maleh appears above the vav. Now, shuruk and cholam maleh are only written with the letter vav and not with any other letter. Chirik, however, will appear below other letters. Now let's see all the last 3 examples together and make sense of them. First, we had David, Dud, and Dod. Now let's have a short quiz. I'll show you the nikud symbol next to a letter, and you have to pronounce its sound. Ready? A, U, I, O, A. Now it's time for Yana's insights. Since you will not see any nikud in modern readings in Israel, you will have to guess by the context of the sentence which pronunciation and meaning it has. It all comes with the experience of studying Hebrew vocabulary. Another tip is when writing the letter vav, it is important to keep the length of the stroke inside the frame. Otherwise, it becomes a different letter. But that's for later. So in this lesson, we studied the letter vav and 3 nikud in Hebrew: chirik, shuruk, and cholam maleh. In the next lesson, we will learn 2 more Hebrew letters: Zayin and chet. See you then! Bye! שלום, אני אנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet Bekalei Kalut, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. In the last lesson, we learned the 6th Hebrew letter Vav and 3 new nikud. Do you remember how to write David and uncle? What about electric water heater? In this lesson, we will learn 2 new Hebrew letters. So let's move on with the 7th letter Zayin. The sound is Z. Let's write it in handwriting first. Does it look familiar? You might be reminded of the 3rd letter Gimel in handwriting. Yes, you are right. They are the mirror images of each other. But don't get confused between them. Gimel faces this way. Zayin faces this way. Okay, how about the print version? Fortunately, this one will be hard to confuse with the print version of Gimel. Even though they are pretty different in print, make sure you don't write Zayin and Vav in too similar a way. Let's see the difference. Vav, Zayin. Zvuv is a fly in Hebrew. Zvuv. And in print, Zvuv. You can easily remember this word since the fly makes this sound. Zvz. Let's move on. If you write Zayin with a comma on the left side, it will sound like zh, as in the word journal or collage. First you write Zayin and then add the comma on the upper left side. In print, usually the letter J is used for foreign words like jaquette, a jacket, journal, a journal, and so forth. Now we move on to the 8th letter, chet. This has the sound of ch, and it is written like this. For the handwriting, keep the corners round. And in print, chet. Almost the same, right? Always the print version will have sharper corners than the handwriting version. Ach is a brother in Hebrew. Ach. The pronunciation is important. Try to pronounce it more glottally from your throat. Chava is a farm. Chava. Here the handwriting and the print versions are almost the same. Let's write them. Chava. In print, Chava. Now it's time for Yana's insights. When writing Hebrew Aleph Bet, always start from the top, both in hand and print writing. In this lesson, we studied two new Hebrew letters, Zayin and chet, with a variation of je. Did you know that you have already mastered a third of the complete Hebrew alphabet and the nikud system? Good job! But how do you write good in Hebrew? In the next lesson, we will learn this and two new letters plus one nikud. See you then, להתראות! Shalom, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet בקלי קלות. The fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. In the last lesson, we learned the letters Zayin and chet. In this lesson, we will continue with the next two letters and learn another nikud. Are you ready? בואו נתחיל. The ninth letter of the Aleph Bet is tet. It has the sound of t. Let's write it. The handwriting of tet is... This letter is a little unusual, in that you need to start from the bottom up. And in print, tet. If you round the corners of the print version, it will be just like the handwriting one. Tov is good in Hebrew, in the masculine form. T, O, V. Tov. And in print, Tov. In the feminine, you write Tova. And in print, Tova. Now, let's move on to the 10th letter, Yod, which has a Y sound. It is probably the simplest letter. Yod, just like a little comma on the upper right side of the frame. And in print version, Yod. Almost the same, just with a little angle. Yad is hand in Hebrew. Yad. And in print, Yad. Now we've completed 10 letters of the Aleph Bet. You're almost halfway through. Can you believe it? Before finishing up, let's take a look at another nikud. Shva. Shva has no sound. It is a silent vowel. It just keeps the original sound of the consonant. Like in ach. Ach is a brother. Ach. And in print version, ach. We will see more examples of shva in the next lessons. We are ready to move beyond words and write a phrase. Ach tov is good brother in Hebrew. The noun comes first and then the adjective. And in print, ach tov. Nice job. Soon you'll be able to write whole sentences. Now it's time for Yana's insights. Before starting the next lesson, try to write all the letters from Aleph to Yod several times in a row, while loudly pronouncing each letter. In the next lesson, we will learn the 11th letter, Kaf, and after that review half the Aleph Bet. How many can you remember? See you in the next lesson. להתראות! Shalom, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet Bekalei Kalut, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. In the last lesson, we finished up the first 10 Hebrew letters of the Aleph Bet and 6 Nikud symbols. Can you remember how to write good brother in Hebrew? I'm sure you can do it. Now let's move on to the 11th letter, Kaf. The sound of Kaf is K. Let's write it. Kaf. Just half a circle to the right, starting from the upper left side and going down. The print is the same but with sharp corners. Kaf. Kaf actually is only pronounced like K when it has a dot inside. Just like Bet only has the B sound when it has this dot. Without the dot, it sounds like Ch. Chaf. A good example is the word kochav, kochav, which means a star. K, O, Cha, V, kochav. And in print version, kochav. Be careful though, the letter chaf takes a different shape when it is written at the end of the word. It looks like this. Chaf sofit. The print is quite similar. Chaf sofit. Now let's have a short review of the first 11 letters, the first half of the alphabet. Be ready with a pen and a paper. I'll say the letter out loud, starting from Aleph, and give you a second to write it down, first in handwriting and then in print style. Then I will write it myself, first the handwriting version and then the print. Are you ready? Let's go! Aleph, Aleph, Bet, Bet, Gimel, Gimel, Dalet, Dalet, Hey, Hey, Vav, Vav, Zayin, Zayin, Chet, Chet, Tet, Tet, Yod, Yod, and Kaf. Kaf. Good job! Now it's time for Yana's insights. How is your Aleph Bet learning going? If you're having a tough time with some characters, how about checking them out on the Aleph Bet chart in HebrewPod101.com's Learning Center. Don't just get stuck in one learning method. Mix it up for the best results. In this lesson, we studied the letter Kaf with its variations and did a review of the last 11 Aleph Bet letters. Next lesson, we will continue with 2 more letters. Do you know what Lama means? So why not join me in the next lesson? See you then. Bye! שלום, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet Bekale Kalut, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. Last lesson we reached the halfway point of the Hebrew Aleph Bet and did a review of what you've learned so far. Did you practice them all? So I guess you're ready for the next two letters that we will learn in this lesson. They are Lamed with the sound of L, and the letter Mem with an M sound. So let's start writing. Lamed looks different in hand and print writing. So pay attention and remember to pronounce the letter while writing. Lamed. Lamed. Lamed looks like a loop, doesn't it? The word loop in Hebrew actually starts with Lamed. Lula'a. Can you read this word without nikud? Lula'a, loop. Easy to remember, right? In print, it looks like this. So how loop will look in print? Yeled is a boy in Hebrew. Yeled. And in print version? Yeled. If you wondered how we make the sound of in Yeled, you're paying very good attention. There is a new nikud there called segol, and it looks like this. You say it with the sound So let's write Yeled with proper nikud. Yeled. And in print version? Yeled. Another example using segol is kelev. Kelev is a dog. And in print? Kelev. Could you read kelev without the nikud there at all? Kelev. Great. The next letter is mem, and it has an sound. In handwriting, mem looks like this. Mem. And in print, mem. Mem changes when at the end of the word, just like in the previous lesson, chaf. It looks like this. Mem sofit. And in print, mem sofit. You might say it looks like a square. Maim is water in Hebrew. Here you can see both variations of mem. Maim. And in print version? Maim. So how would you read this word? This is melech. Melech means a king in Hebrew. Melech. Me, le, ch. Here is Yana's insight. Have you been checking out the Aleph Bet transcripts for HebrewPod101.com's lessons? I bet you can read a lot more now than you could after lesson 2. Go back and browse the Aleph Bet transcripts for a lesson or two, and you'll be amazed at how far you've come. Just think a little more and you'll understand the whole thing. This lesson will learn the letters Lamed and Mem. and the nikud segol with the sound of e. In the next lesson, we will have a little quiz, so practice your aleph bet and the nikud. See you then. להתראות. Shalom, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet בקלי קלות. The fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. In the last lesson, we covered the 12th and 13th Hebrew letters and our 7th nikud. Lesson 9 is dedicated to reviewing the letters we've learned so far. Let's have a little quiz and refresh our memory with Hebrew vocabulary. Are you ready with pen and paper? In the first part of the quiz, I will pick 10 words we encountered in the last 8 lessons. It is your job to read it out loud. Then, I will read the word. In the next section, I will say a word out loud and give you a second to write it down, both in handwriting and in print versions. Then, I will write the word down. So let's start. כלב, חווה, טוב, לולאה, דוד, אבא, גג, אהבה, דוד, כוכב. How did it go? Now let's do the writing test. גג, גג, טוב, טוב, דוד, דוד, כוכב, כוכב, כלב, כלב, דוד, דוד, לולאה, לולאה, אהבה, אהבה, Abba, Abba, Chava, Chava, So how many did you get right? I'm sure it is 100%. Now it's time for Yana's insights. The best way to learn Hebrew vocabulary and the Nikud is to pick up a few children's books at your local store in Israel or ask your friends to send them to you from Israel. It is very good for Nikud practice and for learning to recognize words, because in adult books and in daily life in Israel, you will not see any Nikud around you, and you'll have to be quick to guess their meaning from context. So in this lesson, we had a little quiz for the Hebrew vocabulary. In the next lesson, we will continue to the 14th and 15th letters, Nun and Samekh. Can you already guess what sound they make? See you in the next lesson. להתראות! שלום, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet Bekalei Kalut, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. In the last lesson, we reviewed all the Hebrew letters we've learned so far with a little quiz. Can you write fly in Hebrew? What about star? I'm sure you can do it easily by now. In this lesson, we will learn 2 more letters. So let's start. The 14th letter in the Hebrew Aleph Bet is Nun. It has a N sound. This is how you write it. That's it. The print is the same with a sharper corner. Also, Nun takes a different form when it appears at the end of the word. The print is the same with a little side angle. Pay attention to make the final nun, or nun sofit, longer than the frame. And don't confuse nun with vav. Their difference is only in the length of the stroke. So neched is a grandson, and nechda is a granddaughter. Neched. Ne, che, d. Nechda. Ne, ch, da. And in print, neched, ne, che, d. Nechda, ne, ch, da. And even is a stone. E, ve, n. And in print version, e, ve, n. So let's move on to the next letter, samekh, which has a s sound. It looks like a circle. In print, it's a bit different. Sus is a horse in Hebrew. It's a funny looking word, isn't it? In print, sus looks like this. Sus tov is a good horse. Guess what? You're ready for a whole sentence in Hebrew now. סליחה, כמה זה עולה? Excuse me, how much is this? סליחה, כמה זה עולה? And in print, now it's time for Yana's insights. Samekh is not the only letter in Hebrew with a s sound. We will learn the other in a future lesson. Just like we saw already, some Hebrew letters share the same sound, like chet and chaf, which both make a ch sound. It might seem complicated, but just like in English, you need to learn the proper spelling for each word. We have finished the 10th lesson of HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet Bekalei Kalut. We are halfway through and have only 7 more letters and few more nikud to go. See you next time. להתראות. שלום, אני אנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's עברית בקלי קלות. The fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. In the last 10 lessons, we have covered 15 Hebrew letters and 8 nikud symbols. We have only 7 more letters and a few nikud before we complete the full series of Hebrew Aleph Bet. Aren't you excited? So let's go straight to the 16th letter Ayin with the sound of A. Originally, Ayin was pronounced glottally, from the throat, but in modern Hebrew it is rare to find speakers who are still pronouncing it in that way. So now basically it is another A sound to the list. And this is how you write it. And in print version, Avodah in Hebrew is work. A, vo, da. And in print, it looks like this. אני הולך לעבודה. I go to work. As a male speaker, as a female speaker. Wanna try it in print? Have you noticed a new nikud in this sentence? You are paying very good attention, because there is one. It is tzere, with the sound of e. Do you remember what is the other nikud with the same sound? Tzere looks like this. Nes, a miracle, is spelled with tzere, but you only need to recognize the sound for this word. So don't worry if you don't remember exactly which nikud it should be, tzere or segol. And in print, Nes Gadol is a big miracle. And in print version, now it's time for Yana's insights. Do you have a minute? Try to write all the alphabet you've learned so far in one sitting. At the beginning it might be hard, but it will help you to find out which characters are still difficult to remember. In the next lesson, we will learn letter number 17 and its variations. So don't forget to practice till then. See you later. להתראות! שלום, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet בקלי קלות. The fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. In the last lesson, we learned the letter Ayin and the nikud tzere. In this lesson, we will continue to the next Hebrew letter Pei, with the sound of P. Let's write it down. Pei in handwriting is written from the outside to the inside, and in print, from the inside to the outside. Pay attention to the dot. It makes the sound P. Without the dot, it becomes Fei, with the sound F. Even though it's a different sound, we don't count Fei as a separate letter of the Aleph Bet, just like Bet, Vet, and Kaf, Chaf. Pil is an elephant. And in print it looks like this. And afuna is a bin. And in print, now let's see how the nikud changes the pronunciation and meaning of the same word. Sefer, siper, sapar. Looks the same. So why are they read differently? Let's look at the same words with nikud. Sefer is a book. Siper is he told. And sapar is a barber. The only way to guess the right reading is by understanding the context. So practice your Hebrew reading daily. Pei also looks different at the end of the word. It is called Pei Sofit and looks like this. You start it like Lamed and end with a curve facing down. And in print, please keep the stroke longer than the frame. Sof is an end. And in print version, זה הסוף להיום. It's the end for today. Can you write it in print? While doing it, pronounce each letter and the vowels. Now it's time for Yana's insights. Have you been practicing the alphabet with flashcards? What about the Nikud? Take the flashcards with you everywhere. And when you got a minute waiting for the bus or in line, take a look and pronounce each letter out loud. It might sound weird to the people around you, but that's the best practice. In the next lesson, we will go through the 18th letter, Tzadik. Do you know that Tzadik also has a meaning by itself? I will see you in the next lesson. להתראות! Shalom, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet בקלי קלות. The fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. In the last lesson, we covered the 17th Hebrew letter, Pei, and its variations. In this lesson, we will continue to the 18th letter, Tzadik, which has a few variations as well. So let's start. בואו נתחיל. The letter Tzadik has the sound of ts and looks like this. It looks like the number 3, doesn't it? And in print, it looks different. Start from the top and add the little stroke last. The letter tzadik, if pronounced while putting the emphasis in the last syllable, tzadik, means righteous person or even saint. It is written like this. And in print, now you can remember the letter easier. Tzipor is a bird. And in print, can you pronounce these two? Mivtza, mitzvah. Mivtza is a discount. You will see this word a lot in shops and markets in Israel. In print, it looks like this. And mitzvah is a good deed, a virtue, or a precept. And in print, tzadik also looks different when written at the end of the word, and it looks like this. Tzadik sofit. It looks almost like pei sofit, but be careful not to confuse them. In tzadik sofit, the last loop goes up, and in pei sofit, down. Tzadik sofit, pei sofit. In print, tzadik sofit looks like this. Bots is mud in Hebrew. And in print, tzadik changes its sound when written with an apostrophe on top. It has the sound of ch, like in church. And in print, for example, chance is borrowed from English. It means chance. In print, also chet is just like the English chat. In print, it looks like this. resh is a zipper in Hebrew. It kind of makes the sound of the action, doesn't it? In print, resh. Now it's time for Yana's insights. There are many onomatopoeia words in Hebrew. We've seen zvuv and resh already. Bakbuk is a bottle. Rishrush is a rustle sound or a murmur. Tiftef is the sound of falling water, like rain. Tzilzel is the sound of a bell ringing, etc. In this lesson, we've seen the variations of the letter Tzadi. In the next lesson, we will study 2 more characters and 1 nikud. So see you then, lehitraot! Shalom, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet Bekalei Kalut, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. In the last lesson, we covered the 18th letter, Tzadi. In this lesson, we will learn 2 more letters from the Aleph Bet and 1 nikud. So let's start. בואו נתחיל. The 19th Hebrew letter is Kuf, with the sound of K. Don't confuse kuf with the 11th letter, kaf. They have the same sound but are written and used differently. So let's write kuf in the handwriting style first. Keep the stroke longer than the frame, otherwise it will become hey. And in print, almost the same. Kir is a wall. And in print, the next letter is number 20. It's resh, with a sound of r. Resh looks like this. The pronunciation of the Hebrew resh is similar to the French r sound. Try to make the sound from the throat, rolling the r as if you are gargling water. In print, Dvora is a bee. And in print, the last thing we'll talk about today is the next nikud, called cholam chaser. It looks like this and has the sound of O. We already learned O sound in cholam maleh, remember? However, cholam chaser is only the dot on the upper left side of the letter and indicates an O sound, like in Elohim, which means God in Hebrew. And in print, Elohim. Now it's time for Yana's insights. Try to review the last 20 letters. Write them down in a line or a table, and next to them their sound. Then practice pronouncing all of them by their order. This will be a preparation to our future lesson, where we are going to sing the entire Hebrew alphabet together. We have completed in this lesson 20 out of 22 Hebrew alphabet letters. Only 2 more to go and 1 more of the main nikud symbol used in everyday Hebrew. So see you in the next lesson. Bye bye! Shalom, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet Bekalei Kalut, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. You now know 20 Hebrew letters and 9 main nikud symbols. Have you been practicing your Aleph Bet? I hope so, because you're just 2 lessons away from learning them all. In this lesson, we will move on to the 21st letter and we'll learn another nikud. So let's start. בואו נתחיל. The next letter is Shin, with a sound of sh, and it looks like this. Shin is curved from out to in, and it looks like the English letter E, doesn't it? In print, it looks different though. Shin. Shin is pronounced sh when the dot is on the upper right side. If the dot in Shin is on the upper left side, it is called Sin, with a sound of S. Remember, like all nikud, these dots are usually not written. It's like the dot of bet, kaf, or pay. And in print, Shin and Sin are considered the same letter in the Hebrew alphabet. You only have to remember 2 of its sounds. Now let's try a little wordplay with Shin and Sin. Sara shara shir samekh. Shir samekh, shara Sara. The meaning of it is Sarah sings a happy song. Happy song sings Sarah. In Hebrew, you can say the sentence both ways, and it is still grammatically correct. Try to practice it many times until you get it right both ways. It is challenging, but a fun way to learn. It's time to learn the last nikud used in modern Hebrew. Number 10 is kubutz, with the sound of U. And it looks like this. We already had shuruk, and this is another U sound in the Hebrew vowel system. Meshulash is a triangle. And in print, Meshulash. Now it's time for Yana's insights. Try to make a chart of all 10 nikud we have studied so far. Take any letter and pronounce the same letter with different nikud each time. For example, the letter bet. With kamatz, ba. With chirik, bi. And with kubutz, bu. And so forth. Try to go by the order we studied, from the first kamatz all the way to the last kubutz from this lesson. Next lesson, we will finish the Hebrew alphabet and have a review of all the 22 letters. How is your singing voice? See you next lesson. להתראות. שלום, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet Bekalei Kalut, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. By the end of this lesson, you will know the entire Hebrew Aleph Bet. Are you ready for the last letter? Let's start. בואו נתחיל. The next letter is Taf. Taf is written like this. And in print, Taf. Tof is a drum. And in print, Tof. And Toda is a very important word. It means thank you in Hebrew. And in print version, Toda. Congratulations! We have finished the entire Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. Now let's practice from Aleph to Taf. We are going to sing the Aleph Bet song that every child in Israel knows. It is called Shir HaAleph Bet, the song of the Aleph Bet. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, chet, tet, yod, kaf, lamed, mem, nun, samekh, ayin, pei, tzadi, kuf, resh, shin, taf, aleph, bet, gimel, dalet, hey, vav, zayin, chet, tet, yod, kaf, lamed, mem, nun, samekh, ayin, pei, tzadi, kuf, resh, shin, taf. In the next lesson, we will continue learning some advanced Hebrew Nikud. If you are interested in reading ancient Hebrew, including the Hebrew Bible, you will definitely want to watch. See you then. Bye! Shalom, אני Anna. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet Bekalei Kalut, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. In the last lesson, we have completed the full series of the Hebrew Aleph Bet and 10 main Nikud. This lesson, we will finish the last 3 additional Nikud symbols that are used mostly for reading the Hebrew Bible, the Torah. So let's start. בואו נתחיל. Do you remember the Nikud Shva, the one that has no sound and is called the silent vowel? That's the idea behind the next 3 Nikud as well. These are called reduced Nikud. In 2 out of 3 cases, they make the sound of the Nikud that they are based on shorter. So let's start with number 1, reduced segol. Just add Shva to the segol. The word Elohim, which is God in Hebrew, is written with this reduced segol. Elohim. And in print, Elohim. The second one is reduced patach. Add shva to the patach and it reduces the sound a. For example, acharei, which is after. אחרי, and in print, אחרי. The third one is reduced kamatz. Reduced kamatz is very rare, so you will hardly ever see it. Sometimes it is read as the sound O, and not A, like the regular kamatz. For example, hatziporim, which means the birds. Hatziporim. And in print, hatziporim. Now it's time for Yana's insights. These three additional nikud are mostly seen in the old writings, like the Bible, or in texts related to linguistic changes in the Hebrew language, or in traditional literature. Since modern Hebrew came about initially as a revival of ancient Hebrew, you will find in studying the two writing systems many more similarities than differences. In fact, the differences are more or less limited to the three nikud we learned in this lesson. That's it. You have finished the full nikud system and you are now ready to read any Hebrew text, including the ancient Hebrew Bible, written thousands of years ago. The last three lessons are dedicated to reading some famous selections from the Hebrew Bible, ones that are commonly used as proverbs today. Do you know how the Hebrew Bible begins? Find out in the next lesson of Aleph Bet Bekale Kalut. See you then. Lehitraot! Shalom, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet Bekale Kalut, the fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. We have finished the entire Aleph Bet and the full nikud system in Hebrew. Well done! Kol hakavod! In this lesson, we will introduce a very famous Hebrew sentence, including the full nikud, so that you can easily read it. We started this series with the letter Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So what better place to start our study of the Hebrew Bible than with its first statement, Bereshit. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. Let's break it down. Bereshit, in the beginning. Bara, created. Elohim, God. Et hashamayim, the sky or heaven. Ve'et haaretz, and the earth. Can you believe it? You've just read an ancient biblical text in the original, without modification. Well done! Now it's time for Yana's insights. In English, the first book of the Bible is often known as Genesis. But this is actually a Greek word. In Hebrew, the first book of the Bible is called Bereshit. Does it sound familiar? Of course it should. It is the first word in our phrase in this lesson. In fact, in the 5 books of the Hebrew Torah, all books are named after the word that starts them off. After Bereshit comes, can you read it? That's right, it's Shmot, which means names. This book is also called Exodus in English. Next we have, can you read it? Yes, it is vayikra. And in Hebrew it means something like he calls. In English it is also called Leviticus. Do you know what the next book is? Yes, it's Bamidbar. In English this is usually called the Book of Numbers, but in Hebrew it means in the wilderness or desert. What's the last book of the Torah called? That's right, Dvarim, or words. In English it is also called Deuteronomy. Now you know all about how the Hebrew Bible starts. What's your favorite proverb? In the next lesson we will have an example of a biblical phrase with great cultural relevance, even in today's society. You will see how Israeli people bring even the oldest traditions and make them a part of contemporary life. See you then. להתראות. שלום, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's א' ב' בקלי קלות. The fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet. The Aleph Bet. In the last lesson, we learned the proper reading of some unmodified biblical Hebrew. That was quite inspiring, wasn't it? In this lesson, we will continue and read another phrase from the same book, Bereshit, or Genesis. Are you ready? So let's start. בואו נתחיל. The next sentence is taken from Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, and it became a proverb that is used in many cases in Hebrew, so it is very useful even today. ויאמר אדוני אלוהים, לא טוב היות האדם לבדו, אעשה לו עזר כנגדו. And the Lord God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper to complement him. Let's break it down. Vayomer, and said. This is a special word. Because it represents the real name of God, it is forbidden to pronounce it as written, and we don't even know the original nikud. All we have are consonant sounds. So instead, we just say Adonai, which is Lord God. Now that you know the Hebrew writing, you can try to guess the original name. Elohim. This also means God here. Lo tov, not good. Heyot, to be or exist. Ha'adam, the man. Levado, by himself or alone. Ese, I will make. Lo, to him. עזר, help. כנגדו, opposite to him. An excerpt of this verse, לא טוב היות האדם לבדו, is very well known in Israel. It means that people are sociable creatures and need company. People also use it to suggest that every man needs a woman by his side. Now it's time for Yana's insights. In the Hebrew language, there is a great use of biblical sentences as proverbs in daily life. These are words of wisdom, and Israelis continue to find them applicable to modern situations. If you learn a few proverbs like this, you will definitely impress any Israeli person with your knowledge. The next lesson is also the last of this Hebrew writing series. It is a time for you to be proud. You will have mastered the Hebrew alphabet. But it will also be a time to say goodbye. Have you ever heard someone say there is a time for everything? In the last lesson of our series, you may just hear someone say it in Hebrew. So see you next lesson. להתראות. Shalom, אני יאנה. Welcome to HebrewPod101.com's Aleph Bet בקלי קלות. The fastest, easiest, and most fun way to learn the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet. In the last lesson, we learned a biblical phrase that serves as a common proverb in contemporary Israeli life. In this lesson, you will learn another such phrase, taken from the book of Kohelet. עת לאהוב ועת לשנוא. עת מלחמה ועת שלום. A time to love and a time to hate. A time of war and a time of peace. עת לאהוב. Time to love. ועת לשנוא. And time to hate. עת מלחמה. Time of war. ועת שלום. And a time of peace. As you may have guessed, the word et means time. But there is another word in Hebrew for time, zman. The word et is used in more literary context, however. Israelis use this proverb in a variety of situations. Sometimes you will hear it in political declarations when describing great movements in history, or even in domestic contexts, such as funerals, when one has cause to reflect on the phases of human life. This proverb from the book of Kohelet expresses that all human experiences and purposes have a time and place in which to occur, and that avoiding them may be neither possible nor desirable. And now the time has come for us to say goodbye. But it is also time for you to take your next step in your Hebrew studies. Yana's insight for this lesson is to take advantage of your new knowledge of the Hebrew alphabet and practice it as much as possible. By reading everything you can find, whether it be children's books, newspapers, novels, short stories, magazines, or even ancient texts, you will reinforce what you've studied here and build your vocabulary. But if you really want to practice the Hebrew alphabet, why don't you write a letter to a friend in Israel? Of course, email works great, but if you sit down and write a letter by hand, you will not only get great practice, but make whomever you send it to very happy. We have finished our 20 lessons of Aleph Bet Bekalei Kalut. Now you are able to read any Hebrew text, including the Bible. And once you start writing with a computer or pen and paper, you will be taking part in a tradition of literacy going back more than 3,000 years. What are you going to write? Well, good luck. Behatzlacha.
Expand your vocabulary with our Core 2000 Words ebook. It's free and packed with essential expressions that you'll use on a daily basis. Start building your vocabulary today. Click the link in the description below to download your free Hebrew ebook before it's gone.